The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Well, so we wrapped up the week of trade on Friday. The corn, soybean, and wheat markets all kind of finished moderately lower heading into the weekend. It feels like weather is really the big driver here, and that maybe took some traders out of the market into the weekend, potentially. And we're going to talk about that. It was a good end of the week in the cattle markets as well, and there's been plenty of outside market news that's been thrown at not only the stocks, the dollar, energies, but the grain and livestock trade as well. So here to recap the week of trade action with us, we welcome Craig Turner from StoneX back to Market Talk. Craig, it is good to catch up with you again. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on. Excited to be here.
Well, let's start with that grain trade. And as I kind of alluded to, moderate losses on Friday, pretty much across the board. And, we had a WASDE report on Wednesday, which didn't really give us much in the way of market movement. A pretty quiet report there. It feels to me that seasonality is kind of playing a role here, maybe, Craig. Weather market kind of taking hold with a lack of other fresh news in the grains. I mean, is that how you would characterize Friday's trade action in the grains?
Yeah, I would. It takes a couple of days for the WASDE to trade, so that's all been priced in. Plus, there really wasn't a whole lot of news in there. The Russian production came out, but the USDA basically also said, the demand is going to be a little bit down, and losing 5 million metric tons of Russian wheat is going to be made up for elsewhere. So that was that on the WASDE, and then coming in, it's weather. We are going to be hot, right, and dry for a while, but the good to excellent conditions are very good. We got a lot of this crop in. There's no shortage of corn, right? Beans, you can make an argument, are a little snug on the balance sheets, but not the corn market. And you need, like you said, you need a reason to go higher, right? So I've seen some early estimates, good to excellent on Monday, could be down 3 to 4%. We'll see. It's still going to be high if that's the case. But traders need a reason to get in. And you're right on that seasonality. We tend to put in a top in either May or June most years. And a lot of the planting weather premium is now all out of the market. So that just leaves the growing weather premium plus any kind of late season demand we can get in the marketing year, which for corn's been impressive. We've been unseasonably strong in the corn market, but we're still talking about a 2.1 billion carryout, right? So, I don't think traders really wanted to be long headed into the weekend here.
Well, and to your point about corn demand, I saw in one of your newsletters here this week, you were kind of talking about how strong corn demand has been. I know Mexico, of course, been a big player for U.S. corn demand. But to your point about seasonality, I've seen some charts floating around social media here, people talking about how kind of around Father's Day to the 4th of July, somewhere in there, corn traditionally kind of falls off a cliff, doesn't it, Craig?
Yeah, it certainly can. And there are a couple of things going on. One, there's no more planting risk. So all that premium comes out. And on the growing side, you get your good to excellent ratings. You look at the drought monitor, right? And we have some problems maybe in Western Canada, but Western Kansas, but everything else looks fine. And then, you have an idea of what the forecasts are going to be. You can't really guarantee the weather 2 weeks or a month out, but you have a better idea of what July is going to look like. So you combine the farming practices, the seed technology, the fact that we're not tight coming in, we're going to get a lot of this planted. There's going to be a decent crop. I think the market feels there's going to be a decent crop, and by the time you get to June, let's say early July, unless we think there's going to be a drought where we're going to have a 5% reduction in yield or lower, the market, the weather premium tends to come out of the market.
Speaking of demand, soybeans, I've posed this question to a few folks here in the last 48 hours or so. I'll do the same for you. We saw 3 days in a row, China buying, or unknown, which we presume to be China, buying old crop beans. There still sounds like there's some rumors out there. They're looking for beans in that August-September window. Is this a sign that China might be coming back to the U.S. for more inventory, or is this a blip on the radar, Craig? What do you think?
Well, it can only be positive, right? It's China does not want to buy from the United States unless it has to, and they've said that before. And there have been trade wars, right? So, and tariff
Hmm.
wars, fought over this. So what's interesting is if China has to come to the United States at this point in the marketing year, I'm guessing they can't get it from anywhere else. The big wild card, and just like in any kind of short bought market, is how much do they need? Because I have a feeling they're only going to buy as much as they need, and then if they can go to South America, namely Brazil, for the rest, they will. There's logistics issues, and sometimes that spills over into the United States too. Um, but I don't know. And we're getting competitively priced, but it's still cheaper to go down to South America. So it's nice to see.
Hmm.
I'm not holding my breath on big sales, but if we do, I mean, he certainly can rally. I mean, to be unexpected and cause a big pop, it just seems a little unlikely at the moment.
I mentioned at the top, there's been a lot of economic news this week between the CPI, PPI, the Fed held interest rates steady. We got a dollar that's been moving higher. The Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index Friday was, I think, hit a 7-month low. So a lot of that outside market news. For you, anything in particular that maybe has spilled over into grains or livestock here this past week, Craig?
Yeah, so when I take a look at the macro markets and in terms of what the Fed is going to do, listen, the Fed holds the biggest bazooka out of everybody, and they can use that with either interest rates or stimulus. Just the Federal Reserve does not want to repeat mistakes of the past, and we lowered rates too quick in the late 70s, early 80s, and it caused then Volcker had to really ratchet up rates to get inflation under control. Those Fed guys are all students of history. That CPI and PPI report still being above 3% on the inflation kind of gives them all the ammunition they need to say that, hey, we don't need to lower interest rates right now. So I know the market's pricing in one interest rate cut. I want to say it's around the September timeframe. They've been pricing in one interest rate cut for like 2 years now. So I don't know. We'll see what happens here. I will say this: we are getting closer and closer to that 2% target. And once you really start to see the inflation rate get under 3%, we'll certainly, I think that's when a lot of people, will start factoring interest rate cut. Just as far as how it's affecting, the macro markets. I don't think it's happening. I mean, the dollar has strengthened a little bit here. I think really cattle is up really just because the grain prices are coming down, and I think it has more
Mhm.
to do with that. Plus, you had that, the concerns about the flu, right? And we came down hard on that, and then those concerns went away a little bit. And listen, they're still low on animals, right? And inventory
Yeah.
here, and they're just not being replaced. So, I mean, I think that bullish bias kind of got in, and corn going down kind of feeded into that.
Well, and two, I noticed cash cattle trade was a little bit higher here this week too. So I think that's also supportive.
Hmm.
And for the most part, I mean, demand domestically too is another big thing I'm watching, kind of tied with those macro markets. And so far, I mean, we're people are maybe not as much, but people are still buying beef at the grocery store. It seems like, in this environment, Craig.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think when it comes to food, it is fairly inelastic, right?
Hmm.
Especially in a developed nation like the United States. Also, too, I mean, if prices get high enough, we may see more imports, right? When I talk to ranchers and people in the cattle business, it's interesting. There doesn't seem to be as people want to replace the animals as much as I thought they would with with these high prices. But and then you look at the flip side, people are still buying beef, and I go to the supermarket. I mean, we all go to the supermarket. It's higher, I mean, for sure. And maybe you don't buy as much as it, but everyone's still, it's still out there and happening. So I don't know where it ends. It's interesting. It's kind of one of those things. Maybe people are paying the higher price for beef and cutting back in other parts of life.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, let's kind of wrap up the conversation today, and I'm going to give you a little room here to talk some risk management with all the seasonality going on
Yes.
and the weather volatility and all this data that's thrown at all these markets. I mean, what would you stress to the farmer and rancher right now as they're thinking about managing risk and looking at their marketing plan, Craig?
Yeah, so on the grain and oilseed side, especially corn and soybeans, there is 50 cents of risk to the downside in corn, and there is a dollar risk of soybeans. And that's just the fact, it's just a part of the seasonality and the crops getting made between now and let's say September. Now, if we do go down that far, so I like having puts, I like making advanced sales, whether it be through us at StoneX Fury Elevator. I even like buying puts and selling calls. It's because the seasonality is going into your favor here. I will say this though, I've been kind of bearish on the markets for 2 years, saying we're going to be in a downward trend here. But my tune is going to change come September, October. If we do get down to those prices, we're going to be too close or below of cost of production for a lot of farmers out there. And either you stimulate demand because you get to these prices, and keep in mind, the 1050 soybeans of today was the high eights of 2019, and the low fours of corn is that 330, 340 area, right? When you add in that 10%, I'm sorry, 15 to 20% inflation. So even, and one, demand picks up, but two, even if demand doesn't pick up, it will take acres out, right? And the market has it. Commodity markets have a natural cycle over a couple of years. Low prices cure low prices, high prices cure high prices. So while we're selling, getting kind of aggressive here on any kind of remaining rally, my tune is definitely going to change when we get to September and October here. And I'm actually holding a webinar in late August, for marketing strategies, for harvest and with storage. And if you go to grainsandoilseeds.com, you can sign up for it. We're not going to hold it till August, but grainsandoilseeds.com will have the registration for that. Because listen, the markets turn, and we're getting there. We're not there yet. This is not a buy recommendation to get super bulled up, because the problem is we could be 50 cents lower, or we could be $1 lower, in 3 months from now. But I think the time for being, bearish and, consistently bearish is starting to end here.
Well, great thoughts. And again, you mentioned that webinar, grainsandoilseeds.com. If folks also want to reach out to you in the meantime, Craig, I know they can get a hold of you there at StoneX. Where's the best way to find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. They can email me at craig.turner@stonex.com. They can go to that website, and all my contact information will be there. And if they check out my podcast, which is the StoneX Grains and Oilseeds podcast, on any podcast platform, you can find all my contact information there too.
Really appreciate the conversation. Thanks for helping us wrap up the week of the trade. Craig Turner with StoneX. Craig, have a good one. We will talk to you again soon.
Thanks very much. Have a great weekend.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@MarketTalkAg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.